Welcome into another episode of They've Got Now. I am excited to be joined again by a returning guest, one of my favorite people to have on and to talk basketball with. That's Wyatt Crosher, also known as Hoopla Wyatt over on Twitter, runs a phenomenal website covering the Big Ten. Wyatt, first and foremost, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Mark. I'm glad to be back. Thank you for the lovely intro. I'm happy to talk hoops as always.
Oh, of course, man. We've got so much to dive into as well because the Big Ten has been nuts, especially now that we're out to having 8,000 teams in the Big Ten. There's a lot to keep up with, a lot to keep track of, and it's interesting. So, like doing bracketology, I think I had 12 teams for the Big Ten in this just today, I guess. Um, and that looks like where we're headed as the season goes on, but also that leaves the door open for a lot of craziness to happen right in the middle because I'd say half those teams are like squarely right around the bubble, which makes it interesting. But the thing I want to start with today, because I feel like it's so easy to like lead off with other things going on, but like UCLA is 19-0. They are the best team in the country. They have, in my opinion, until they lose a game, they're the best team in the country. You can argue that other teams are playing better. They're 19-0, beat the reigning defending national champions, and have just dominated the game. Can make whatever case you want about strength of schedule. I'd argue still that their strength of schedule has been really strong. I wrote about that in The Athletic this morning for those who haven't read it. But like you look top to bottom, they have great wins over a lot of tournament level teams in the Big Ten. Have absolutely housed quite a few teams. Like Nebraska felt the brunt of that one.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that we just we can't let it keep going by the wayside because this team has been so good. Um, Before even like getting into individual things about it, like how would you kind of describe the season for UCLA? Have they kind of met expectations? Feels like unfair to say, but like, what have you thought of them so far? How have you thought of them as they've gone into the Big Ten season?
It's like as soon as they beat South Carolina early in the season and like took that number one spot, it's like it feels like you've everyone's been kind of like looking for a reason to like drop them from
Yeah.
one, and they've just never given anyone a real reason to. Like they have yet to have a single digit margin since then. Like they started against Louisville and that was a battle. And like they've had some definite tests along the way. Like at Indiana was kind of tough. Like at Washington, like they've definitely been challenged, but they just look so solid. Like when every time I see them, like their whole roster, they're so deep, like they're so filled with talent, and they have, I think, as I would call a star in Lauren Betts for sure, like one of the best players in the country. So like the fact that they have like a top player like that, along with such incredible depth, like it's just hard to pick like major flaws in like anything they're really doing right now.
No, absolutely. I think what has stood out a ton is the way they've been able to close games. Like you mentioned, I think that Washington game, Washington is like, we're going to talk about Washington later,
I
but
love Washington. Yeah.
yeah, they're tough for me. I like them a lot, but also they are a tough team in some
They're a
ways. But
chaos
like,
team. Yeah.
yeah, but that's a game that I think they might have struggled with last year. Because UCLA's biggest issue last year, in my opinion, was crunch time and closing minutes. Like, how do we put the right lineup on the floor? Are we getting a good shot? What does this look like? Do we take care of the ball? And I think they've been phenomenal at that this season. Even as I mean, they shot the ball really well outside of conference play. It's tailed off a little bit in conference, but it's still been like kind of where I expected. This team feasts on the interior, being able to attack the paint, and then they've been one of the very best defenses in the country. I think they're second in the conference only to USC, their other crosstown rival, who we'll of course talk about shortly. But you hit the nail on the head right away talking about Lauren Betts because I just want to list off a couple of things really quick. Because number one, this is not me saying that like she should win National Player of the Year, but I just think that any kind of National Player of the Year talk in the country should probably be leading off with her. I think she's been that dominant. She's averaging just raw numbers, 20 points, 10 rebounds, just about 2.5 assists and 3 blocks per contest. But to dive in a little bit deeper, because I was doing that this morning while I was prepping for this, opponents are shooting 44.4% at the rim this season against UCLA when Lauren Betts is at the floor. That's not even just primary defender, when she's on the
Yeah.
floor. And that is the lowest number in the country for college basketball analytics. And that's so much of it to me. That is like such a big crux of this. Like you watch, I think she's had 21 blocks in the last 3 games combined. particularly against Baylor. Like Baylor just had nothing to counteract what she brought in the paint. And it's not just that she's in the paint; she's so mobile for somebody her size. She doesn't get into foul trouble. She's elite at maintaining verticality. Like she does all the like. It's already difficult to play against a player 6'7", but when you have a player 6'7" that understands all those nuances of like how to be good at being 6'7" on the basketball court, that's just even harder. To add some more to that, she currently leads the country in paint points per 40 minutes. So I use per 40 as a sample just to like
Yeah.
obviously I mean when somebody's playing 30 minutes per game, uh their number is going to be high already. So like you want to try and sample that out to include bench players. And yeah, she leads the country in paint points for 40 minutes while also being arguably the most efficient player in the Big Ten. Um, she has a 29.7% usage rate, which is just so for reference, JuJu Watkins is at 32%. And not using this as just a comparison thing, but just for reference, because it can look
Yeah.
different because she's in the post compared to on the wing. But she's shooting 62.5% true shooting right now, which accounts for free throws and just overall efficiency, which when you sort the entire Big Ten for usage and true shooting, like that basically puts her at the mountaintop, right? So you're looking at like a chart that goes, from bottom up this way, kind of showcasing like, all right, who's got the highest usage while also being efficient. She and Juju are neck and neck, but it's like she is by far when you consider it's like 2 percentage points, that is a pretty decent amount when we're considering where we're at this point in the season. I also want to add, I know I'm throwing a lot out, but it's
I
just
mean, she like it deserves it though. I get
yeah. I
it.
think sometimes people will look at turnovers. I hate the way turnovers get discussed because number one, all turnovers are not created equal. Number two, again, Lauren Best is playing like 30 minutes per game. I think she's turning the ball over about 2 times per game. But again, when you sort it out, she's only turning the ball over on 13.8% of her possessions, which is like right around the 90th percentile for players in the Big Ten. That's good. When you consider the position she plays, how high her usage is, and what that usage looks like, that's a good rate to be collecting turnovers, considering. And I mean turnovers includes like travels, anything like that. Um, so point being, like there just really is not a hole in Lauren Betts' game right now. And more importantly, she takes out a lot of the best aspects that other players have playing against her. And to me, that's why UCLA has been the best team in the country. Obviously, they have a ton of depth, which we can talk about too. But like we're saying, I think just to sell this as it's a really deep team undersells how incredibly good Lauren Betts
Yes.
is.
I think that's the most important point because yeah, despite how good like 7 or 8 other players on this UCLA roster have been, like they can go deep. Like Lauren Betts being as incredible as she has been at the top is the main reason why they've been so consistently solid like all year and haven't had a loss or even a single digit win since November.
Mhm.
I was looking at some of the stats with like the only other name that came up with like usage plus true shooting is Gracie Merkel at Penn State, which is kind of an interesting one because like the way they're using her, like she is like everything in Penn State's offense when she's out there. But like obviously it's when you add everything you said and then also the defense, which is like she might be one of the best defensive, she's probably the best defensive post player in the country or one of them. Like there's just like she's such a well-rounded player outside of her ever needing to shoot a three, which you know, probably not needed.
Hey, she didn't. It was she. I think she made one last year. I'm trying to remember. I know she took one last year. I can't remember if she. Actually, I'm incorrect. She's never taken a three. It feels like she has. I'm thinking. You know what I'm thinking of? It's the she hit the high post fadeaway against Oregon State to
Mm.
send it to overtime last year. That's what
Look,
it
maybe
was.
she'll get a Camila Cardoso buzzer beater opportunity,
Yeah.
like that one with she had. I forget who it was against, but
Tennessee, can't
yes,
forget. Trust
yes.
me, they will let you know if you forget that one.
Thank you,
Uh,
Mark. Save
but
me.
yeah, it's interesting. I think looking at synergy, Lauren Betts only taken 6 jump shots this year, which I know she has it, which is the interesting part, but like they don't need it in a lot of ways. And
Right.
she's gotten so good at like picking apart double teams. Like it's really hard to double team her. And then you look around, okay, this team is really athletic. Like Gabriela Jaquez, awesome cutter, always moving, can really attack the basket. Actually, ironically, she is shooting better on 2 pointers this season than Lauren Betts. A lot of that's because so
Seven
many of her
percent.
biscuits are assisted. But yeah, I mean, 67% as a
Goodness.
wing is pretty crazy. Um, on top of that, too, like I think Kiki Rice's growth this season has really impressed me. Um, I think she has really just taken a step to become a consistent defender in a way that I didn't always feel from her last year and in her freshman season. And there have been games where like she legitimately can just take players out of the game because she's been that level on defense. Like she's playing with a lot of strength, um, both with the ball in her hands and when she's playing as a defender. Um, and just again, the efficiency has been really impressive for me
I
with what she's been
yeah,
able to do.
with Kiki Rice, I was anticipating like this leap. I think we talked about it when we were doing our like preview for the season of like it felt like because of the losses they had, like I felt like Kiki Rice had an opportunity to kind of maybe just like to take some extra steps needed to take them from excellent team to one of the best in the country. And like her efficiency from three has gone up. Her assists have stayed the same, but her turnovers have gone down and her defense has taken a leap. Like she just looks like a really solid player. Like she always has been a good player for UCLA, but like is like doing the role that they really like needed her to do like so well, I think, this season.
Yeah, and that's I think I was really interested to see how that would play out, just knowing that they were going to have some more players capable of like kind of playing lead. And I've always felt like Kiki's more of a combo guard to me, probably somebody who
Mhm.
will end up being more of a two guard. Um, and she's done such a good job just playing in that role, like obviously thriving in early offense, um, still able to go out and get a bucket whenever you need it, but like. Alina Arnasalu has been one of my favorite players in the
Yep.
country. Like one of the best freshmen in the country in terms of just pure impact and ability to create things. Obviously, her role has decreased a little bit as they've gotten fully healthy again, but I still just think her ability to kind of set the table and slow things down has been so big for this team. Just having another player who can do that. Um, and I mean, somebody who has played professional basketball already, who has
Yeah.
a ton of experience already, in spite of being a freshman, obviously. And I've just really enjoyed what she's brought.
I agree. I feel like that was like a freshman under the radar for me, like one that I maybe didn't ping as going to be as significant as she was, but she's been so good. 4.6 assists per game. Like I know, like you said, like Kiki Rice has kind of taken some of those minutes. I know that she started the season with 10 starts, but like her, and then you have like Dugalich, who we haven't even brought up yet, or
Yeah.
like Tamia Gardner off the bench is shooting 39% from three. Like I know they're not a heavy 3-point shooting team, but I think having so many players shooting in those mid to high 30s to help spacing for Lauren Betts. I think like it's just such a well crafted roster for like a college team. Like it feels like you couldn't like make it better than they have so far.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we brought up that Washington game, and I think the Washington game to me, like that's a game they lose last year because you mentioned the shooting. I think it's fun because this team has I wouldn't like exactly. It's not a quote unquote shooting team. It's just a good team that
Yeah,
moves the ball around and has a lot
it
of
can
options.
shoot.
Yeah. And like part of why they won the Washington game is they were able to like really transition and say, okay, they're packing the pan on us playing double big. We need to find ways to mix this up. I want to say Tamia played really well in that game, hit quite a few threes. I'm trying to look off the top of my head because I didn't think about it until right now. But point being, like they have the ability to like really mix and match and put together lineups that make sense regardless of what game it is. Like they just kind of find ways to put the right ones out, and that's mattered a ton. I think do you see games where they really use their size and find ways to take advantage of that, like how they closed the game against Michigan. You look at their game against Baylor, where again, excuse me, I think they just did a great job staying down, guarding, and letting Lauren be the center of everything, as Moose decides he wants to be the center of everything too. Um, so yeah, exactly. I think there's just so much to like about this group. And like you mentioned, having to me, like having that core of forwards, having Angela Dugalich, who is just so good in every facet of the game, like smart facilitator, has hit her shots, can do a ducking in the post, versatile defensively. You have Tamia Gardner who brings a lot of the same, particularly more as a shooter and being able to stretch and do things like that. And then Janiah Barker, I've been really impressed with. I'll be completely honest and say that I was definitely like interested to see how things would go with Janiyah coming in. I think she's always been somebody with an immense amount of talent. Like, there's no question of that. But like slotting in and being more of a role player, I was interested to see what that would look like, and I think she's done an incredible job with that. Especially in the Big Ten play, like really just figuring out how to get the most out of her game. Kind of playing with energy, especially as a defender. I think she's cleaned up a ton of stuff compared to where she was at with Texas A&M. Like just getting a lot more comfortable. Um, Playing a role. And I think sometimes people will look at stuff and be like, oh, well, you know, she should be a star. She should be doing this. And I'm like, I think to me, a lot of unlocking your ability to be a star is getting so consistently good at the fundamental stuff that keeps you on the floor. Um, and I don't know. I'm just so interested to see how this keeps going for her. I really want to see her personally stay another year at UCLA because I've loved watching this development for her. And I think that there's just so much she can continue to unlock. But again, like having this kind of versatility and depth on the roster has been so big for this team. And again, just having an answer for everything, it feels like.
Yeah. Have you looked at their stretch to end the season? They've got some matchups coming up, certainly.
Yeah, we're gonna, well, exactly. We're gonna learn a lot about this team. Obviously, they play Maryland on Sunday. I'm hoping, I don't want to guess. It could be interesting because obviously it's gonna be at Maryland, so there's a chance that Shy
Yep.
Sellers plays. Obviously, Shy didn't travel with the team to go to Columbus for this matchup with Ohio State that happened. Was that yesterday? Or
That
was that?
was, yeah, yesterday.
God, it feels like days ago. Um, But so I don't know. We'll see. Regardless, I just hope that she gets healthy and right. But yeah, they play Maryland. They play a very feisty Minnesota team who we'll talk about. Um,
Hmm.
they take on Ohio State. Oregon's tough. Then they play at USC. Then Michigan State. Then Illinois. Then Iowa. And then Wisconsin. So out of their last 10 games, Wisconsin's the only team that is for sure not going to make the NCAA tournament.
Barring quite a end of the season,
Yeah,
yeah.
unless Wisconsin wins every game.
Yeah.
It's pretty unlikely that they make the tournament. So yeah, we're gonna learn a lot about this team. I think we've already seen a ton. Do I think they'll go undefeated to finish the season? Probably not, but it's really hard to
USC
do that.
twice as well. I
Yeah,
hard
yeah. I
to
mean, we literally get them against USC on the last day of the regular season. That's pretty great. I
Yeah.
can't complain about that. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I still think having watched, obviously, we're not going to know for sure until February 13th when we see the crosstown battle. They'll be at the Galen Center for this one. But I still think UCLA is the top team in the Big Ten, top team in the country until decided otherwise. So,
We should also say that LSU South Carolina has not happened as of this recording, just
oh,
in case,
true. That is a very fair point. Yeah, that
just in
happens in
case
30
it swings
minutes.
some opinions.
Yeah, that is very fair. So we will see on that. Well, let's talk about USC now, who is 18 and 1, has played a
A
very
meager
strong
18 and 1.
a meager 18 and 1, yeah. Uh, while also maintaining the best defensive rating in basketball currently, which stands out. Well, also like it's interesting because like you see that people talk about the offense and this and that and the X's and O's. I'm like, I mean, this team is 15th in the country in offense right now. They're very good. This is a very, very good team. And I think part of what's been really fun, like obviously they tested the hell out of themselves in non-conference. There were some bumps and bruises, which you say they one loss
Yeah.
against a top three team in the country. Um, but it feels like they're kind of starting to find some extra things that I'm really excited about for them moving forward. Obviously, I think we should start by talking about JuJu most likely, but what where are you at with USC right now at this point in the season?
I would kind of agree with you. What it felt like, and it makes sense considering like they brought in such significant names that would like change how you're gonna play compared to last year, like bringing in Kiki Iriafen, bringing in Talia von Oelhoffen, like and all the freshmen as well. Like there's so many new faces that have to like try to coerce, like work together. Like it's not quite as easy of a situation, but like I really do think that they're starting to figure it out more and more. I remember that first Ole Miss game, which they won, but like was just an absolute meat grinder of a game that I think they may have hit 1 3 in or
Yeah.
zero, like it was low. And then as that continued to go on, I was like, is this going to be enough of a concern? Like they aren't really hitting from three, like, and it's still not necessarily a strength, but like I think similar to UCLA, like there's so many other strengths with this team, and the star power here is just like so impressive. And like I know everyone is aware of JuJu Watkins from the freshman year, and like I still think she's certainly in talks for National Player of the
Oh, I
Year.
agree fully.
But I do think it feels like people are almost like underselling her sophomore season as like not a slump, but maybe not like jumping to the heights that people thought. But like she's averaging 24.8 points per game, 6.6 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 2.4 steals, and 1.8 blocks, which are the craziest numbers to me, those ones. Like she is a two-way menace still. Like her efficiency has been good. She's shooting over like 51% from two. She's up to 36% from three. Like those are kind of the leaps I was hoping to see with like her efficiency with all these extra stars they brought in. And I think she's done that. Like the turnovers went down, have gone down a little. Like I think even if the numbers are like her scoring is down from last year, like considering who they've brought in, I've been super impressed with how Juju has adapted and like has had a really, really impressive sophomore season.
Yeah, so let's put it like this too, because I fully agree in everything you said. And I do want to say too, my thing with Lauren, it was not meant to say she
Oh
is the
no,
national.
I didn't think it
I don't
was.
know who I would vote for right now
And
because
Hannah
obviously I don't
Hidalgo
have a vote,
obviously
but
like has had an
yeah.
incredible year. Like
But yeah, just to lay that out. But point being, with Juju, I think like exactly what you're saying. So much gets lost, like quoting, like I mean, her box score numbers look similar to last year, very similar.
yeah,
But like you mentioned, the efficiency difference is huge. So 58% true shooting right now is at 51 last year. That's a giant jump. She's taking more of her attempts from three. She's getting to the line even more, and she earns those calls. I don't care what anybody says. Like
yeah,
that, and also I want my players to get to the free throw line. Is it always perfect to watch? No, but that's part of winning basketball is getting free
skill.
points, and
Yeah,
she earns it. Like I don't know. I just debate a wall. Um, but exactly like you said, she is just a demonstrably better basketball player this year. She's a better decision maker. She's more patient. I think, I mean, when I had Mackenzie Forbes on to talk about this, gosh, last month after the UConn game, and like I think so much of seeing that game was, I mean, yeah, Juju is just so much more comfortable on the court, which is a scary proposition considering where she was at already. Um, and not even most importantly, that's the wrong way to put it, but like most of note, like her usage is just dramatically different this year. I feel like that continues to go under the radar. Obviously in numbers, so like she had the highest usage rate in the country last year, almost 43%. So usage rate is just how often you're starting and finishing a play. She's at 32% this year, which is still a very high number, but that is like a dramatic difference from last season. Obviously, it took some time. There were some growing pains to kind of figure everything out. I still don't think that the offense is quote unquote perfect yet. But when you factor in how much she's being asked to do, what the expectations got raised to from last year, I think it's so easy to forget this team started ranked 17th in the country last year
yeah,
before that game against Ohio
yeah.
State. Like the expectations just jumped so quickly because of what she was able to do right away. And that's what happens when you're a great player. But I think again, like remembering the timeline is so important in this because it's not even been like 400 total days of live basketball. That's meaningful. But exactly like you're saying, she just does so much good on the court. Um, yeah, it's been pretty nutty to watch. I think particularly seeing her, even when she's quote unquote not having a great game, finding other ways to chip in and still be impactful. Like especially in that Indiana game, being able to get free throws late, like that matters. Like clearly it was some. It felt like I believe she was like sick or something for the Indiana game. I could be wrong on that, but it felt like it, at least in watching. Um, yeah. So I don't know if you have anything else to wax poetic on with Juju, but that's yeah.
I think like when I watched Juju last year, and I've gotten more because of the Big Ten move, certainly, but like I was always impressed of like you are such an incredible player, and I can already tell you can be better than this, even like and I felt like everything I felt like with the efficiency and like with decision making, and like I've seen exactly what I've wanted to see in year two. And so I feel like there is still like some areas where she can continue to go up the ladder even more. But like that's just like it's picking at such little things at this point. She's such a special player that like lets them do what USC wants to do, and like because their offense isn't as maybe as perfect as it could be, like I feel like she can bail them out still. And like considering like they didn't just bring in like a co-star. Kiki Iriafen was like is like a big high volume type player, who I know obviously worked with Cameron Brink, so it's not like she's was coming from being a number one necessarily, but like she averages 18 points a game, 13.4 shots a game. Like that's gonna hit the volume, like you said. So I think this is like only beneficial for Juju to learn and adapt from and evolve from. And I think that like I've seen all of those things, and I think she's gonna keep getting better.
Yeah, I think one thing I do want to hit on too, because I think this often gets lost and like, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but just in general, I think so often people watch offense and they think the ball has to swing 17 times and there has to be a ton of movement and
Right.
cuts and everything for it to be good offense. Is it pretty to watch? Is it effective? Yes. And I'm not saying that one thing is better than the other or not, but the
Yeah.
point is scoring points and doing it efficiently is what matters. USC's done that this year. Like I just want to point out for because like I think I've tried to explain this to people, but to me, like I think you have to take JuJu in a different light in some ways because where JuJu sells is a place where honestly the WNBA is not typically like geared towards isolation basketball.
Yeah.
And I think to me, what makes JuJu special is she is the kind of player who is going to be a very good pick and roll threat and probably one of the best isolation scorers we've ever seen because she's already been doing that in college. So for reference, she's like almost 90th percentile in the country in isolation scoring, including passing. So that's like all possessions in isolation. And yeah, because who can guard her one on one? Pretty much nobody. So like
Yeah.
if you can spread the court, have a player in the dunker spot, three shooters or four shooters, however you want to have it, um, get JuJu Watkins in isolation and then have her draw help and read it, like that's going to be some of the best offense that anybody's going to create. With her height, her burst, her touch, like again, we just don't see players often. I'll say we've never seen a player like JuJu who is capable of doing the things she does, reading the court as well as she does. So I think in a way it's like you kind of have to redefine what you think of quote unquote being good basketball. Because to me, there are fair gripes with a lot of players holding the ball and taking over a possession, but like that's what the offense is supposed to do because Juju is so good at it. Um, so moving on from that, uh, you mentioned Kiki, and I think again, Kiki is a player who saying go under the radar feels ridiculous, but to me, I felt like the Nebraska game was like a perfect encapsulation of this. Like, I think there have been moments where they're trying, like, getting Kiki involved all the time and like in a rhythm, I think is going to be important. It hasn't always been perfect with that, but that Nebraska
Yeah.
game, she got called for some absolutely BS fouls. Like I thought some of the early fouls in that I questioned a little bit. And then she just promptly came out and absolute that fourth quarter, I think was the best quarter she's played this season. Was absolutely unreal in that quarter. Um, and took that Nebraska game from somewhat close to, okay, we're just demolishing them now. I look at the Maryland game too, where like the Maryland game was such a fun test for this group where like obviously Maryland really excels in playing pretty spread out, playing more
Mhm.
switchy, a lot of wings. Like that moment when they go, here's Cheyenne Sellers at the five. Let's see what happens. And then they go, okay, well, we're putting Kiki at the five because we can't play double big with this. I think it was like 90 seconds in. They changed lineups and put Kiki at the five. And like you saw her ability to dominate the game like that. And to me, again, like it's a different kind of versatility, but it still is. And like I think so much again gets undersold how big of a change it is to go from playing in Stanford's offense to playing in this kind of offense, a more modern look alongside somebody who has the ball a lot. Like you have to kind of figure that out. She's still been finding her spots, but I mean she's playing like an All-American still right now.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like the numbers like are still really good this year as even as they've been trying to figure it out. And like up until Purdue last game, she's been double digits in every single game this year, which like I have even felt where like I'm like waiting to see more of what it can look like. And then I look at the numbers and I'm like, oh, I'm wrong. Like I like she just does it every time, like even when I am not sure about it. I don't know. Like her rebounding is obviously so impressive as well. And like I knew she was a talented player. I was curious about the fit with her and JuJu. Like I figured it would work eventually, but like what would it look like? But the more they play together, I think they're figuring it out. And like I mean, she had 28 points against Penn State 2 games ago as well. Like she's definitely finding her rhythm. And like that game you mentioned with Nebraska and the foul trouble, she'd fouled out the game before as well against Michigan. So like to have that in the back of the mind, plus like it was impressive. It was impressive to me that she was able to like have the resilience to come back and have the quarter she did. So I've been really impressed. I think like I've been impressed with those two and Raya Marshall as well. I think has had like a really good adaptation to like how she's played. Is still doing her thing even without like the scoring volume. Yeah, USC is good. I'm willing to say it. I think that they're a pretty good team.
Well, a bold take.
Yeah. I think I think what was confident was I thought USC would be at one, but like UCLA being at one, these two teams we thought would be the top two teams. And
Yeah,
I think even like with the hot starts of Ohio State and Maryland and like whatnot, I do think that they have shown that they're the top two teams or the teams to beat in the Big Ten.
I agree. I do just want to hit on a couple more things. So like you mentioned with Rhea, I think she has been so good. I understand exactly like you said, her you can look at the numbers, this and that. Like I think scoring on the interior, she's always going to have some limitations there, just in
Yeah.
general. Um, but watching her excel in this role, like they, I think it can get lost sometimes. Like, okay, if she and Kiki are not always the best fit offensively,
Hmm.
but again, having the lineup versatility of one of them can play at the five, the other can be on the bench, and then you can spread things out, and then
Yeah.
have somebody else who's backing up there, coming and switching things up. Obviously, there's still a ton of teams that play double big in college basketball, so there's a lot you can do with that. Um, I've just been impressed with her improvement as a passer and facilitator because they do a ton of stuff letting her operate from like the top of the key and the free throw line. And I understand like just put the ball in JuJu's hands or a guard's hands all the time, but sometimes like just giving another look of being able to invert a defense, put the five out, and just kind of change things up gives you a lot of options. It just gives you another look, something else that you can do. And I think it goes undersold too. Like I think if I had to pick right now for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, it's between Rhea Marshall and Lauren Betts. Like, I don't know where I would lean right now, but like Rhea's been that fucking good. And again, like we talked about, USC has the best defense in basketball currently. Currently the top defensive rating in basketball. And when you factor in who all they've played, yeah. Her ability to just destroy stuff at the rim, be one of the best help defenders in the country, switch, like be really mobile on the perimeter. But also, you can see so much with her being a high level communicator for this team. Like, she's incredibly important for what this group does.
Yeah.
I think it's, again, this team is defense first, and she instills that every time she's on the court. And then another player who does, obviously, is Kennedy Smith, who I love
Yeah.
watching her play. She's got such poise and savvy already as a freshman, which I was expecting to hit right away because I haven't watched her in high school. That's who she's been. But like, I mean, just an awesome role player in this group, fantastic defensively in like every facet, hits her threes, brings some additional scoring pop. I've really liked Avery Howell's punch the last couple games, just had a career high. You saw the flashes from her early on in the season, and now I think you're starting to see her, okay, cool. I'm becoming like a consistent bench piece. I have this figured out. Like, obviously, Kaylee Heckle, I've liked since obviously since she was at Lehigh, but like again, yes, there are always going to be some quote unquote like freshman issues that you have with at times with these players, but like they're very high level players who have come in and been able to play a role and figure it out a little bit. And I'm just excited for what those players can continue to look like moving forward.
Um, it's just funny, like, because all their major depth pieces, like a lot of their major depth pieces being true freshmen is like, well, they're just gonna keep getting better. Like,
Yeah.
like they're still like they're this good already, and these are true freshmen, like who are playing key roles, or like, obviously Kennedy Smith, who missed what 5 or 6 games there in the middle of the season or toward the beginning of the season. So like all of these things, like there's so much reason to believe that USC can peak at the right time. And I was looking at Rhea Marshall. According to her hoop stats, her defensive rating this year is 66.3.
That's
As
it's not bad. Seems
it's
pretty
sixth
good.
in the country, but with no minutes restriction, so I have no idea who's ahead of her. But like 66 is nasty business.
My assumption for who's ahead of her is probably Lauren Betts, honestly.
It
Um,
might be.
but yeah, let's talk about. Do you have anything else on USC?
No, I really am just so excited to see those two teams play.
Yeah.
Like they're both coming, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just getting in general, like the Big Ten matchups we've gotten this season has been awesome. And like
Mhm.
actually hit pause. I think the best part about this season though has been like just like you kind of hit on earlier, like I didn't get to watch USC as much last year. These teams are not on Pac-12 network anymore. We get to actually watch them play basketball. It's pretty great.
Feels wrong
Um,
watching like Juju Watkins on Big Ten Plus.
It does feel wild still. I will say too, yeah, having to watch shit on Big Ten Pluses, don't even get me started on that because that is like the worst product in basketball now. Now that Flow Hoop season is over,
Yes,
Big
yes.
Ten Plus is getting all the brunt
It
of
clears the
my
flow hoops
disgust.
bar.
Yeah.
That's what I'll give it.
That's a low bar, dude. I can make like my own home production that's got more value than Flow Hoops. But um we just saw a really great game last night. Ohio State, Maryland. Unfortunately, as we mentioned earlier, Shy Sellers didn't play because she has a knee sprain, I believe was the verbiage we got. Um, Suffered during that Texas game. Uh, I don't want to take too much away from this game from a Maryland standpoint, just because obviously missing Shy, who is their best player, missing Bree McDaniel, who unfortunately suffered an ACL tear. Well wishes out to her, hoping that she can come back strong next season. Um, but I think to me, this was more just like this was an important game for Ohio State to win. Coming off that loss to Penn State, which that dropped them from a 2 seed in my bracket to a 4. Like that was a rough loss for them. Um, so to be able to come back from down double digits to just absolutely smothering with that press and unlocking some things in the second half, um, I was really impressed with what the Buckeyes did in this game. Where are you at with them? What was kind of your feeling after the Penn State game, and then how did that alter about 72 hours later after they took out Maryland at home?
Yes. Penn State, like that loss to me, like obviously Jelani Cambridge was out for that game with an
Yeah.
illness. Yes. It still is a Penn State team that had not had a Big Ten win. My dog wants some attention if you can hear the whining.
Oh, you're good.
But even with Jelani Cambridge out at Penn State, like Penn State hadn't won a Big Ten game and you're undefeated Ohio State. So I can't say that like I give them the excuse to lose that one, but like no team is perfect. You're gonna have an off night,
For sure.
whatnot. I was surprised how significantly they were out rebounded by Penn State. I know it's not Ohio State's strength, but that was to me like the biggest like worry sign, especially going into Maryland, a team that has been so good at rebounding. And that was kind of the story early on to me was like Maryland was dominating the glass. They just looked like they were like getting to every loose ball. Ohio State like wasn't turning them over at a significant rate early on. And then like they were able to take that punch, which they did have done so well in the past few years under Kevin McGuff, and like just completely flip the script as soon as they found some momentum. Like that press starts going, you force some turnovers, you get some layups and ones. Cody McMahon's going absolutely berserk with the energy. Like they just are able to flip that switch, and when they do, it's like poetry. I'm like, where was this the whole game? I
Yeah.
think credit to Maryland for like giving him such a scare without Cheyenne Sellers. Obviously, I think she's so important for everything they do. Such a special player to lose. And I thought they handled it pretty well, all things considered. Christina Dulce had 18 rebounds and was just a menace on the boards all night. But like also credit to like Jelani Cambridge at 20 points. Cody McMahon was pretty inefficient, but like found the buckets when they needed them. So I was impressed with the able like to take that early punch and like come back against a still very good team. But like the reboundings, which they were still out rebounded pretty heavily in this game. I think that's like the area where like they really like they got to find some sort of answer there.
Yeah, it was interesting in that game because so much of how Ohio State sets up their offense is they'll often play like five out, but then they run like a action on the weak side that goes into like sort of a twirl. So a way to like open up driving lanes and just kind of play in getting some mismatches potentially or opening up a shot. Um, and I thought Maryland did a really fascinating thing that I think we're going to see more teams do after watching that was cross matching. To be fair, not every team has the kind of player who can do that, but Christina Dawsey played a
Yeah.
really good defensive game on Cody McMahon. So they cross matched her from the 5 onto Cody at the 4. And they really gummed up a lot of stuff because Cody wasn't super comfortable outside. Some of the drives got stifled because Christina did a really good job meeting her at the point on drives. But then, like you mentioned, that second half, when they worked in the half court and got onto that, um, they threw in Ohio State threw in some really good stuff of adding in a cross screen after that initial action happened, so that I have to force a switch or something to happen defensively. And I thought Cody made really good plays off of that. Like I
Yeah.
agree, like not the most efficient game, but her ability to just keep improving at reading defenses and getting more comfortable as a ball handler has been really big this year. Something we saw towards the back end of last year, but again, continue to see that play out this season, which has been good. You mentioned Jelani, and like I just think again, like she somehow has gone so quietly
Yeah.
ascent. I mean, she's leading them in scoring in Big Ten play. She's been unreal. I mean, she was so key in that game yesterday. It felt like half her points came in transition, but that was the point. Maryland was doing a really good job defending in the half court, but they could not keep up with anything in early offense or off the press. Like I don't I mean what I think we weren't even like 3 quarters through, and I think well it was like beginning of the fourth quarter there was a score bug coming up showing that Maryland had given up 18 points off turnovers, and I know it finished higher than that. And so much of that was Jelani and Taylor. And like again, I know Taylor Theory's box score isn't crazy this year compared to like when her sophomore year, that jump was huge. But like what she's done defensively, particularly in the half court, she's gotten so much better. Like she was a good defender, but she's become like an elite defender. And I'll be mad if she doesn't make Big Ten All Defense this year. But like her ability to just kind of sit down and really defend, I thought she did a really good job on Kayleen Schmeichel throughout this game. But also like has continued to just develop some stuff offensively, like has gotten a little bit more comfortable doing things. Shout out to the step back three and tongue out against Oregon. Uh, she's just been so steady for them in unlocking a lot of things for them. I agree though on the rebounding aspect. I think a lot of it is like just Asia Petty not getting into foul trouble, which I think can be hard with
Yeah.
how this team plays sometimes, particularly in the press. It puts you in a difficult spot on the back line, but when she's on the court, it just opens up different stuff for them. I do have to shout out too, Kennedy Cambridge.
Yes.
Since
Yeah.
she's gotten healthy, she's had some big moments, like especially yesterday. She
She
had
had a
big
great
time
game
moments. Yeah.
yesterday.
Watching her and her sister play together has been fun, just like a kind of like a nice little like chaos lineup going on. So I've really enjoyed the punch that she's brought.
Also, Lamilla off the bench, also with 4
She
blocks.
always has like
Always.
she doesn't play like big minutes, but every time she plays, I'm like, I like her. Like she
Yep.
does something. And I agree, like just having again like that extra player has been really nice. Um, you see something out of her every game that again just is quality. Um, what do you most want to see from this team moving forward? Because who do they play this weekend? I'm pulling it up right now.
I think they get Nebraska.
Oh yeah, they play at Nebraska on
That's a good
Sunday,
one.
and then they play Washington. Ooh, and then in a 6-day stretch, they play Washington, UCLA, and USC. That's tough.
Is
Um,
it a road trip one or is it or some of
well,
those home?
they take Washington at home first, and then they go to UCLA and USC,
I
which
mean, if they
is
could win one of those,
tough.
that's obviously huge, but that's a big ask.
Yeah,
I like, I think like it's hard to say with Ohio State. Chance Gray had such a great start to the season, and like one bad game doesn't change that. But she went 0 for 7 against Maryland. I think when she's on and like her 3-point shooting is hitting, that's a significant thing for Ohio State because like they were 3 for 19 from three in this game. Like they without JC Sheldon now, like it feels like it could be a weakness if Chance Gray is off and like Taylor Theory is like do you know the Moneyball meme where it's like, hey Billy, this is whatever, except they have one fatal flaw. It's like Taylor Theory is good at everything, but just will not ever be high volume. like
yeah,
just like I was like, and I know you have Cody McMahon and Jelani Cambridge, like it's gonna happen, but like she's just so steady and solid at everything. She can shoot the three. She's like very efficient, but I just want that volume to go up a little bit.
no,
I
I
just
agree. I wish she would take 10 shots a
because
game.
she's so dynamic as a player and she's so good on defense. I just would love to see it go up to like 10 shots a game. Like, I would love that just to see.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would actually like open things up, but I just got to know because she's just so good at like every little thing on the floor, it feels like, except she has not been high volume at any point in her career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I like you mentioned with Chance, I agree. Definitely want to see your numbers continue to tick back up. But I think the big thing for her, and this is not meant as like a slight like past players, but I think part of what like really has set Chance apart is she can hit those shots and she's good enough at them that you have to guard her. So she's getting, I mean, she's never, at least in my watching, I haven't felt that she's ever been like quote unquote sagged off of. Like you always have to worry
Yeah.
about her. And I think part of what's been tough sometimes for Ohio State is like even last year, I think they had moments where it's like, okay, well, we don't really care about guarding this guard on threes, or we're comfortable just like having to, do a screaming closeout or something. And I think with Chance, you always have to be stapled to her. So,
Yes, that's true.
um, obviously want to see her continue to bounce back, but she's still been playing really well. So yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, exactly. So I agree with you. I want to see that continue to bounce up.
And
Um,
or if Cody can keep because Cody had a solid start from three this year and she's like at 35% on the season. It
mhm.
started to like dip back down, but like it was in the mid low 20s her first 2 years. So like
Yeah.
even being a minor threat from three would be huge for everything she can do.
Absolutely. Well, let's transition to talking about Maryland now off that game. Um, I think, and again, like I said, I don't want to use yesterday as like necessarily an example for them, but it was in a way sort of indicative of how this year has been. Like, I think that this Maryland team, like we talked about before the year, I think this Maryland team has the potential to be
Yeah.
close to that same level, if not on the same level as USC and UCLA. The issue has just been they have a 5 to 10 minute stretch every game where they just kind of lose the plot a little bit.
Hmm.
And I don't, it's been a little bit frustrating because I can't always pinpoint why. It's just, it happens. A lot of it too is like this team is, when this team runs offense, like when they just run their offense, they play in the flow, it looks great. When they start just saying, okay, let's play, like obviously you want to take some stuff early offense. You don't want to just like leave that on the table. You can get easy points doing that. That matters. But I think where I struggle most with this team is when they decide to play a little bit random instead of doing what they do well. Um, that's when I feel like they make typically their worst decisions with the basketball and take worse shots. Obviously, again, you don't want to just take away all freedom from your players to be able to do stuff. And I think they have players who can really excel in playing some of the randomness of the game. But especially with Bree out, like I just think it gets even harder to do that, in my opinion. Um, as good as this team is getting to the free throw line and attacking the paint, they are not a great finishing team. Like that has been one of the biggest issues for this team this year, is like they're finishing on the interior, particularly on drives. Like they have some players who really can, but there's also been like often this team can be like more resigned to like taking a long two or forced into
Yeah.
taking that because they don't have a ton of blow by speed. Like this is not a team that is like dusting you off the dribble. It's a lot of we need to work our sets to get into something or work our actions to get into something. And again, that's not meant as like a slight to this team, but I do think in general that's kind of what the difference is between them and USC and UCLA. Like USC and UCLA can generate a high value shot instantaneously. I think this team has to work for it a little bit more. And to me, when they stop working for it, or when they just kind of like let the offense devolve a little bit, that's where you kind of feel it. When that 5 to 10 minute stretch hits. Do you agree with that, or where are you at with that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Also, do you see me battling like this moody lighting that's now
Dude,
on the
I was doing the same thing like 20 minutes ago, and if you gotta
I'm,
move,
I'm living
absolutely no
in it.
worries. Oh,
I'm
okay.
living in it. It's not hitting my eyes, but I can see it there either way.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think like I like in these past couple games, specifically the USC loss and the Ohio State loss, because like both of those games were ones they've had leads in various ways, and like we're really competing with some of like these top teams in the Big Ten and against Ohio State without two of their best players. Um, like those spans of time, you're like, oh my gosh, like I can fully, I totally see the Maryland. Like this is like the Maryland that I was hoping for, and like it sometimes does just fall apart. I think for the various reasons you laid out, like they are very like they're very lanky. They've got so much of like athleticism in different ways, but it's not necessarily in speed. Like they're very versatile. They can defend all the positions, and like I think the additions in that sense were really strong. But I agree, like that blow by speed, I think is lacking. Even though I think her numbers weren't anything incredible yesterday, I really like Sarah Tabiasu as like someone who can like add a little bit, and like obviously she'd be getting minutes all year, but like if Sellers is going to miss more time than just the one game, I think like I really want to see a lot of her and see like what they can do with her kind of controlling a little bit more, especially Bree McDaniel, who I wanted to touch on as well. Like, isn't a Cheyenne Sellers necessarily as far as like top player, but like she is such an important piece for like everything she does for Maryland.
Yeah, the
Like
energy changes every time she
yes,
touches the
when she's
floor.
out there, it just feels like a different, like there's like a spark that like lights no matter what is happening. Like she has such like an energy and like I think the team, it's just something that the team can feed off of, even if they're like in a cold spell or whatnot. And I think that's just hard to replicate. Like it's just, I don't know if they're gonna have to find a different way or like, or she'll like speak me on the bench or whatnot. But I think like finding that spark is huge for Maryland, and like Cheyenne Sellers may do that when she comes back. I'm under that assumption that she'll be back soonish based on the report, but we don't know. Um, this stretch was always gonna be hard, and I wish I could have seen Maryland at full strength to face it because I do think that at their best they can be up there and win a couple of these games. Like I know their schedule was easier in the non-conference this year than it has been, but I was really like impressed with what I think Kalen Schmeichel has been fantastic. Like bringing in Dulcie and Sailor Poffenbarger for rebounding has been huge. Like all the pieces that they think they needed, they brought in. And like the season's not lost by any means, but it's just a bummer that like this pivotal stretch, like they lost like a huge spark plug who like can shoot and does so much, and then you lose your star point guard, everything guard. So I'm just like I'm bummed in that sense of like I wanted to see it, you know?
No, I agree. I mean,
Yeah,
totally. Because I mean, it goes without saying, it's a different game last night if you have either Bree or Shy or both
yeah.
of them.
Texas game's a
Um,
little different. Like I know when
yeah,
Sellers left, they were down big, but like still,
yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, even just mentioning Shy too, like her Big Ten play has been unreal in 7 games.
yes.
Averaging 19 points, 5 boards, 4 assists. But also, I mean, just shooting the leather off the ball from everywhere. Not taking a ton of threes, but shooting almost 67% from three, 54% from the field, getting to the line 7 times a game. Like she has been, like I think it was interesting because early on in the year, I think I was actually almost like, hey, I need Cheyenne Sellers to take more shots. Like
Yeah,
but now I'm like, oh, okay, this is awesome. Like you get the kind of the full blend of everything a little bit. Um, like particularly in that USC game, they really just could not guard her in the USC game, which I think that's what made the game tough to you because so much of why they lost the USC game was like just some awful rim outs that happen. Like it happens. You have a bad bunny and like I think that's one of the issues for this team in on their defense is like how often they are playing on the back foot because of they like to play an early offense and do stuff out of transition. And I think that really bit them in the USC game because you go from being like just about tied to like down 3 possessions, and that can happen fast. Same thing with Ohio State, like wanting to play fast, and then you kind of play into the press a little bit, and oof, that's tough.
yep,
But I mean, point blank, I still think this team is like on track, very much so, to host in the NCAA tournament.
yep.
I think they have the potential to do even more, like we're both saying, and I just want to keep continuing to see that. Um, I do have to shout out too, real quick. I've really enjoyed Ali Kubek's play. She has like continued to stretch her game out, been really efficient. I thought she actually played really well yesterday against
I
OSU.
agree. I agree.
Um, so I just yeah, I'm excited to see more of that moving forward and just kind of how they kind of fill in some stuff with this. But let's transition to a couple more teams. We talked about Nebraska briefly earlier. Nebraska has been like again a team that is kind of I don't even like saying under the radar necessarily, but like they lost that game in really difficult fashion to UCLA. I think they lost by almost 20. It was like 74-55, I believe. Um,
91-54.
Oh wow. Okay, I was underselling it.
Yeah.
Wow, oof.
They got
Um
they did the UCLA USC trip back to back.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. Um but they have won 5 straight games since then. Penn State, Michigan State, Rutgers, Iowa, and Wisconsin. So most importantly, beating Michigan State and Iowa was big in this. And obviously like I just don't think it can be undersold. Beating the teams that are quote unquote ranked below you, like just do it and get it done with because
Yeah,
then you don't have to worry about it at the end of the year. Um, Obviously, it's sucked because this team has just dealt with a bunch of season enders already. Particularly with Natalie Potts. Like Natalie Potts was looking awesome to start the year.
yeah.
Um, but now it feels like you're kind of seeing some stuff out of this team that has been fun. Obviously, Alexis Markowski is always there. Just it's wild to think this is her last season. But I wanted to talk about Britt Prince really
I'm
quick
glad
because
you do.
like very underrated freshman. Like has just been a really steady two-way presence for this team. Plays with a ton of composure. A big reason why they won that Michigan State game. And just as a whole, like looking at what they've been able to do this year, I think having that player who obviously she's not Jazz Shelley, but being her own player who can kind of fill in a similar way of like being somebody who can create for herself, create for others. I've been so impressed with her. Even when she has games where she's maybe not shooting the ball the best, like just the ability to be a consistent threat, has been so impressive to me.
Yeah, I think like Nebraska, because I'm like now having to focus on 18 teams, like sometimes I think if a team is like just meeting expectations for what they're, I feel like Nebraska for a while was like winning the games they were supposed to, but like they were avoiding me like having a major thought about them in just in the sense of like they're doing well and like they're where I thought they would be. And so I felt bad. I feel like I haven't covered them much in hoopla. And then like that Iowa game, never miss a Nebraska Iowa game, I would say. But the
Yeah.
past three have
Or
been
Nebraska Creighton game. Never
yes,
miss
yes.
Nebraska Creighton. Nebraska Creighton's always insane.
The last three, the three times ago, Iowa, Nebraska, it was Nebraska made a huge fourth quarter comeback when Caitlin Clark was close to the record, and Nebraska came back and won. And then the Big Ten championship that went to overtime. That was one of the best games I think since I've covered this conference. And then this one also went to overtime. This one sold me. Like I already liked Britt Prince, but the way she like took over in that late fourth quarter stretch, hit that step back three, like drew the contact for the foul, sunk both those free throws without any like issue at all. Like just not stuff a true freshman should be like expected to do, despite us seeing it like a million times this year because this freshman class is insane.
Mhm.
Um, but like 22 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 6 steals in 41 minutes at Iowa. And that place was like it's still packed. Like um, I was so impressed. I don't know what this Nebraska's team's ceiling is necessarily because I think Natalie Potts was truly so impressive in those early games that I thought like they might be able to go to the moon with if she can like follow this freshman of the year trajectory into like an even better sophomore year. She was shooting like 72% from three, which like isn't sustainable, but
Yeah.
showed like that's something she clearly had been working on in the offseason and like was a new thing. Um, so it's a bummer there, but like they still have Britt Prince, Alexis Markowski, Logan Nisley, I like quite a bit. I think she's a great shooting option at least for them. Like Jessica Petrie's another really solid forward for them. Like they got still decent depth. Like if you look at the roster, I just think like Natalie Potts I thought was going to be like a major X factor, so it like dropped their ceiling for me initially. But like to go on this 5 game winning streak after those couple tough losses, like Nebraska is going to be a tournament team and they're going to be a hard out because they're still like very solid. They're very good at what they do, and if Britt Prince can just keep going up, then their ceiling might be higher than I thought.
Yeah, and I think the hardest part is like you have to game plan for Alexis Markowski every
Yeah,
game. As Michigan State has just like as good as Michigan State is, that has been like their Achilles heel is like defending Alexis Markowski. Which I guess that can transition to us talking about Michigan State right now. Um, I love this team. I think it's so interesting because they're so different from last year. Um, but still obviously like play a very similar style in a lot of ways where it's like I think last year's team was so elite at creating an open three, and this year's team is like just pace, 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 attacking the basket. Similar to Maryland, this team is like right near the top in free throw attempts per game, but also like just always attacking the rim, like nonstop. They're always there. They force a ton of turnovers. The only issue is that they turn over the ball a lot themselves. There's been a lot of like I just like again, this team is really good, but I think if they're able to kind of like rein in a few of those things, they'd be even better. Like, and I think I mean that in the best way. This team is 16-3 right now. They have good
yeah.
non-con wins. Their defense has been way, way better this year. Um, and I've been really impressed with how a lot of players have kind of filled in, how some have taken another step. Um, where are you at with where this team is right now? Headed into well, we're going to talk about Michigan next, but headed into their first rivalry meeting with Michigan this weekend.
That game is going to be a good one.
I'm excited,
Oh, yeah, we can
very
talk about it
excited.
more when we get to Michigan as well. But yeah, I think like I my only fear with Michigan State this year was that they'd have some sort of sophomore slump because like that's what Illinois' kind of path has been. But Robin Freilich is just I think she's an incredible coach, and I
Yeah.
just am so impressed with how like it's like some of the same names certainly, but like you said, they're playing a bit differently. Like the fact that they're bringing Grace Van Sluten off the bench these days is a bit remarkable, and it's working. Like her numbers are still very strong off the bench, but like it's so interesting to me. Like I think Julia Ayral, I continue to think is one of the most underrated players, at least in the conference. I don't cover nationally as much, but like she does everything for them. Like she's a great scorer. She can shoot the three. She's a great rebounder, very solid defender, can guard all the positions. Like I think she's just a game wrecker for them, and like something unlocked with her under Robin Freilich, and it's never returned. Like she's just like turned into an animal out there. So I'm always impressed with her. I think Theron Halleck is such a key piece for them. She came off the bench last year and has been more of a starter this year. Even though her three hasn't fallen a ton this year, like like dynamic in different ways and a very pesky defender. I think Jocelyn Tate's had a great year. Like they're another rock solid team. Like this quote middle part of the Big Ten that has these like NCAA tournament teams, less bubble, but like Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, Michigan State kind of fit in there. Of like, I don't want to play any of them, man. Like they're all very solid teams that like on their best night definitely like have what it takes to like move up a notch. I think it's just finding like some of that consistency. And with Michigan State last year, it was like just finishing games you're battling in. Like they were competing against Iowa last year, Indiana, Ohio State. They just like couldn't close it out. So I think like so far their losses are pretty understandable. None at home yet. Like I think I want to see them beat like a top team. They like Vanderbilt even impressed me when they came back in the fourth quarter because I don't think this team last year could would have done that. So I just want to see them continue to win these close battles because I think that's going to matter when I'm assuming make the tournament.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Even with, I mean, you talk about them playing Cal earlier in the year
Yeah,
and that comeback.
that whole tournament
Um,
was huge for them.
yeah. I think even like the Maryland game was really close. I think that could have gone a different way.
Yeah,
Again, I think a lot of it comes down to like just slowing down a little bit.
they don't
Because
love
I
doing
mean,
that.
for reference, this team is they are 352nd in the country right now in personal fouls on defense. They, granted, they're like, I think I'm trying to pull up the number again, but I mean, they are 288th in the country in personal fouls drawn, which is really good. But like, I think finding part of it too is like their style. Like they play the press constantly. They play with a lot of speed. They play very aggressive, and I
Forcing
love it.
24 and a half
But it
turnovers
is
a game.
like
Yeah.
because that's been part of the issue. Like they've had to bring Grace off the bench because she's been in foul trouble so much, which that's not necessarily just a system thing. Like that's also like Grace, you can't foul. Like
Yeah.
um it's been some learning process with that because I think foul trouble has been one of the biggest struggles for this group. Like as important as Jocelyn has been as like a wing defender, somebody who can really unlock lineups, like
Yeah.
she's averaging almost 4 fouls a game in Big Ten play. Just dealing with fouls as a whole is like
Hmm.
I think if they could tone that down a little bit, that just opens up some different stuff for them. I do want to add though, like Emma Shoemate, we were both high on before the year, has been really good, particularly slotting it off the bench. She's just been an absolute gunner for them. I've loved Jaden Simmons' impact. Like
Yep.
just the box score doesn't capture it all. She's been so key in like uh helping this group become very, very good defensively compared to where they were last year. Just I really like what she does for them at the lead guard spot too, because she's kind of played as a de facto point guard a lot. Um, can't undersell Nyla Hampton's impact as a closer in games. Like she, like you mentioned that Vanderbilt game, the Cal game, like that was so much her. She's been awesome for them. But the player that I like have to shout out, Ines Sotelo. I really liked. I loved Ines Sotelo watching her play overseas. Um, and like now seeing her come in and play in this like kind of spot starting role, she's just good, man. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
technical stuff that she can learn still and get better with like fundamentals, but she just knows how to play basketball. Like I think that's the best way I can put it. She's in the right places, she's there at the right time. She may make a mistake, but she's going to do it in the right way. Like she's been capable of stretching the floor. She can handle, she can attack the basket, she can face up a little bit. She moves well defensively. Like she's gonna be a good player, man. Like I'm really excited about her. I love what she's brought already, but the sky's the limit for her. That was a really good get for MSU, and like to see her, it's funny because like before the season, I was like, I think she's somebody who could come in and maybe play a little bit right away, and started off slow, but now we're here where she's playing almost 20 minutes a game in Big Ten play. So I've really enjoyed that. It's been very fun to watch her play.
She's one of those freshmen I feel terrible about that she's in this class because like
She
she
just goes
definitely
under the radar.
yeah, right.
But
Last year it probably has a case for all freshman team like but this year it's just there's so many juggernauts that like she's gonna get like very much underrated and I think like she's shooting 65% from two like she's been a very solid player for them and also Michigan State spreads out their minutes like
yeah,
so
yeah, they
much
play
down the
pretty
line.
deep.
Yeah.
Um, So to add to, I they play Michigan, Oregon, Northwestern, Michigan again, Wisconsin, but then they close with UCLA, USC, Indiana, Ohio State, Minnesota.
Oh.
So we learn a lot in that last five
Yeah.
games. And I think it's what's going to be tough is like I think they need to win at least two of those last five, which is doable. I don't want to make it seem like it's impossible. If here's my thing, I want to see this team host in the NCAA tournament.
Okay.
It's
Okay. So that's
possible.
what you say need to is in
Yeah.
that.
So when I say need to, I think that's what you have to
Okay.
happen. Obviously, it depends what happens in the conference tournament too. Um, because right now I think I have them on a five seed, which is feels right. They've had some really good wins. They don't quite have like they don't so they've beaten Cal. I don't think they have like a top 20 net win. Vanderbilt's like right there.
I was about to
Um,
say, do they fall at this point? Yeah.
yeah. Um, but point being, like, because this would be the first time hosting in the NCAA tournament since I think 2015, 16, if they were able to do that. And this team's capable of doing that. Like, I think if they hit some of the notes we talked about, this team could be in line with that. I'm excited to just keep watching it roll out because, like we talked about, Michigan State is about to be elite basketball. Let's talk about Michigan, who just played again. Awesome game. Michigan Minnesota was a awesome.
Yep.
That one was
Yep.
2 nights ago, right? What was
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna say, please tell me that wasn't yesterday. Um, the Silas Swords Amaya battle back and forth will not
A
be
battle.
forgotten. That
Yep.
was literally awesome. But we're gonna talk about Michigan first and then Minnesota. Um, Dude, it's been sick because this team getting that win over Minnesota was huge and like, hey, we have that win over a top 25 team. And I think Minnesota has, in my opinion, cemented themselves as that level of team with their level of play against Maryland and Michigan here, just in general. But this Michigan team is just they've played, I think the tough other than I want to say other than USC, they've played the hardest strength of schedule in the Big Ten. Um, and that has resulted in a lot of close losses. But now they're starting to pull out some of those wins. Like I love this team. I love watching them
Mhm.
play. I think that they have I mean, it's been fun because like they are better than last year's Michigan team, like
Yeah.
pretty easily, in my opinion. Um, where are you at with this team headed into Sunday's game against MSU?
I love that they've embraced what this season, even like if they weren't winning games, they embraced what this season would be as far as developing like these freshmen and like immediately like we're starting them against South Carolina. Like we don't like that's fine. And they were I mean, Kim Barnes-Rico was proven right immediately with that South Carolina game. I know it was a loss, but like my goodness me, I was like I took so much away from a moral victory standpoint from
Hmm.
that game. And that has been the case for most of this season at this point. Like all of their losses are like even if they were a little more lopsided, were against respectable like opponents mostly. Like even that Oklahoma loss like was what about 10, I think.
Yeah.
I think like Silas Swords, Olivia Olson, Mila Holloway, especially Swords and Olson immediately like blowing me away. Like Swords it took truly one half against South Carolina. We're like, okay, yeah. And like, I knew like she was on the Canadian Olympic team. Like I was fully aware of what Silas Swords was, but I was still just like, oh my goodness. And then Olivia Olson, as the season has gone on, has like potentially matched or some would argue surpassed, depending on what you're looking at, like her production. Like Olsen leads the team in scoring. She averages 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and like is a very, very good player as well. And then Mila Holloway is like maybe like third out of those, but has been an incredibly impactful player for them. Like all three of them, I'm just so excited, and I'm like I know the transfer portal is like huge and you never know and who knows what this will be. But like if those three stayed together for a couple seasons, it would be I would love to see what that team would look like. And then like Jordan Hobbs staying and like is being like it feels like the veteran piece to bring it all together, I think is huge. I think Hobbs was really good last year for them. And has continued and kind of taken and embraced this role of being kind of the veteran part of this starting lineup. I think Greta Kampschrader's having her best year yet. I think she's played a really impactful role. Like they're not as deep as some of the other teams in the Big Ten necessarily, but like the top end talent on this Michigan team, like if it all is clicking at the right time, is just so much fun. And like it should only get better because a lot of it is true freshmen.
Yeah, no, I mean I couldn't agree more. I think especially with Hobbs, it's been so fun to watch her. I know she's in like a little bit of a shooting slump right now from outside. But I think it'll come back. Like we talked a little
Yeah.
bit with Chance Gray, like she's just the kind of shooter that you have to acknowledge. Um, I think what's been really fun with her, like she just does so much for this team. Like you could see that last year to a degree,
Mhm.
but it's gotten even higher this season. And I think you see so much of that too. And like obviously you don't want to like make a ton out of like just vocal leader, this and that. Like we're not there. We don't necessarily see that. But I think like you get an impact of that and feeling of that on the court. And obviously, talking to Silo too, she's mentioned that. And so it's been cool to see that aspect. But that, like you mentioned, just this freshman class as a whole. I love Olivia Olson's game. Like plays like uh just that mid post out game that is so hard to defend because not a lot of players have it has been really fun to watch. Versatile defensively, like Sila, I think with her, just her, like you mentioned with that South Carolina game, just her composure at
Yeah.
her age is like nuts, man. She's
Mhm.
such a good player. I'm so excited to see her continue to grow. And like we say, like continue to grow, but this seems like on track to be I think I have them on as a 7 seed right now in the NCAA tournament, possibly even go up from there. Mila Holloway, I think, is the player who probably dealt the most out of the three freshmen with like some handling being a freshman. But then
Yeah.
she's just turned that into consistency in Big Ten play and really found another level, which has been really dope to watch. Um, you mentioned Greta too. I keep saying you mentioned. I'm sorry to the
No.
listeners. That keeps happening. But Greta, similar to like we talked about with Taylor Theory, I think Greta Camstrader could take more shots. Like she just has like little spurts in games where it's like, oh, Greta just scored like 8 points in a quarter. And then she doesn't take a shot the rest of the game. Like part of that is like, the way things get game planned against and how defenses shift, but also like I think she's capable of it. She's been good. It's a good team. I also have to mention, I love Brooke Quarles Daniels' energy. She is really fun whenever they like want to break out. We need to pressure a guard or like just
Mhm.
get in somebody's face. She's been really good at that. She fights on the glass for way better than you would expect for somebody who's 5'9". Um, or 5'6". Geez, I can't read. And then an incredibly random shot. Speaking of the freshman too, Tayala Delfos has like again every game. There's just like a small stretch. I'm like like there's something there. She's not quite there yet, like readiness level. I think it's harder as a big at times to like be fully ready to play. But excited nonetheless. Do you have anything else on Michigan?
I was with her. She's had a good run against like Rutgers when they were able to give her some more like extended minutes, and I thought she looked really good there. So I feel like just continuing to find if Michigan can find some big wins or like more opportunity to get her involved, like yeah, I think like they're in such a good space like at this moment. Like you never know what the portal is and you can't try to predict it, but like I would love to see this team just like stay together as much as it can. And Kim Barnes-Arico, I think is like she's proven time and time again that she's like can take this team so far. And like it always feels like she finds like a veteran player. Like Jordan Hobbs had a good year last year, obviously, but like they're they've always had someone who like started as like a very small role player and like just finds a way through. I am absolutely blanking on the name I am thinking of as my example. Emily Kaiser was
Yeah.
the example I was thinking of like she was there forever and like Amy Dilk was there before as well. Like they always have someone who like shows up. Emily Kaiser was like there forever and then like just erupted and was like a star forward in the Big Ten. Like as soon as Naz Hillman left or maybe even a year with her. Like it's nice to see Jordan Hobbs like show up like this and like be rewarded for it. And I think she's been so important because like they're so new everywhere else. Like Greta Camstrade, I think's been there 3 years as well now. But I think this team, like I my hope for them this year was to show the potential of what they could be, and they are well past that. Now it's like, okay, can they be a top 8 seed in the NCAA tournament? Sure. Like that seems like they should do that at this point. And like the fact that they're doing that with 3 starting freshmen, like I'm so impressed. So I'm just excited to see where they can keep going.
No, absolutely. Um, well, hitting on Minnesota now. I was really interested to see what would happen with this team in the stretch that they had to take on and are going to continue to take on. But it's worth noting, beat Illinois, which was their first like real big win. I think it's worth noting too. Like obviously Illinois has dealt with some injuries, so I don't want to undersell that.
Yeah.
Um, but especially after losing Mara, who was having a really great start to the year, we know the level of player she's been. Um, I was just interested to see what they would look like, and I think they very much showed up and showed out against Maryland and Michigan in both those games. Obviously, they would have liked to take one away, but Amaya Battle has just been awesome this year. I have loved watching this team play. You and I were both excited about them last year, but I think it's been, again, continuing to build on that, having that group of sophomores take that jump into being upperclassmen. Um, and Tori McKinney has been like one of the best freshmen in the Big Ten. Has again like gone kind of under the radar because his team like they play a little bit of a slower pace, so you don't always like see like massive box scores that are going to pop out. But she just produces, leading them in assists per game, um, creates really well at the forward spot. Um, so yeah, I've enjoyed this team a lot. I'm hoping that they can kind of keep riding this and parlay this into a tournament appearance.
I feel like Tori McKinney has a lot of Taylor Theory tendencies
I feel
in
that.
all the ways, which is great because I think Taylor Theory is an incredible player. I think like she McKinney just seems like she's so versatile and like in very like for a true freshman, especially such a good defender. Does get into some foul trouble, which like is probably her biggest concern. But like as a true freshman, I will accept that as a as your biggest concern. But she's been shooting the three well. She's like right now her averages are 47, 37 and a half, 89% for like which is again for a true freshman quite good like and like all the metrics love just the impact she has for this team. um I was looking, I think they went 1-9 after Mara Braun went down until like postseason play hit last year. So like when she went down again 5 games into this year, I was like, oh no, like that she's such a significant player, like obviously as an offense and a shot creator, but like her defense improved so much last
Yep.
year. She avoids turnovers and continues to make plays. Like such a great player, and like I'm really hoping she can come back to this team this year because like what they've done without her has blown me away. Like Michigan has blown me away from like my early expectations because of like how quickly the freshmen have been able to make an impact. In Minnesota, like I thought they could be good with at full strength, but when Braun went down, I definitely like thought that just by pure talent in this conference that they would struggle more than they have, and they have like completely stepped it up. I think Grace Golchowski has like been really, really good as like I don't even want to say primary scorer because it's not like she's like way ahead of them, but like willing to take on more of the volume. I think she's done a better job this year than she did last year. As you said, Amaya Battle like continues to be a great playmaker and has cut down on the turnovers significantly from her first couple years, which has impressed me. Both Mallory Heyer and Sophie Hart, I think, are very solid in the interior. Annika Stewart, who I've been talking about a bit on Blue Sky, I think is like having a quietly remarkably efficient bench season, and has been like a sneaky like one of the better pickups that a team made in the transfer portal, because she's like been shooting the lights out off the bench for them. I think that like I really like how Dom Plitzowait has like brought this team like from where it was. Like they have an identity, they play slower, but they're so good defensively and very efficient and very turnover averse. Second least two turnovers in the country. They just have such a they're a hard team to beat because they don't beat themselves type mentality.
Hmm.
And I think that's like exactly what they needed when Braun went down. And I've just been so impressed with them.
Yeah, and exactly, like I'm loving everything you're saying. It's been really tough, obviously, because you don't want to see them without Mara. But part of what's been really fun to watch is like I think there's always been like the flashes of Amaya becoming this kind of player.
Yeah.
Or like I don't know how to phrase it properly. But like you mentioned, I think she's just gotten so good at like managing a game and playing as a lead guard, but also has
You could see the
gotten
maturity
so,
most of
yeah,
it.
has
Yeah.
gotten so much better as a shooter, has clearly put in the work on that. But then you look at the last couple of games, she scored 20 plus, been close to, so 18 plus for the last 5 games. But it's just been so aggressive, which I've loved to see because I think that there have been times in the past where like she's been comfortable just like, okay, I'm just going to run the offense and do this. Where like to me, there's a level of like to be a great player, you have to kind of take that step of figuring out when it's time to take over. And that's why I loved watching both Maryland and Michigan games for her. Because when it was late, when those games were tight, it was I'm taking the ball and I'm attacking the basket. And she was incredibly efficient in those games too, which is what I loved because like there was no hesitation. It was just going. And like again, cutting down the turnovers as the level of playmaker she is and how much she has to control. Um, I've just been really impressed with her. Like really good defensively, does so much on the court. Um, I think somebody who should be in line for all Big Ten this season potentially. Obviously, there's like 8,000 players and very few spots.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've just loved watching the season from her.
I've like the fact that they lost Braun, who was like such a good like assist to turnover player and like runs so much of their offense, and the fact they have a 1.74 assist to turnover ratio without her, or like primarily without her this season, like blows my mind. Like I don't know if that's just incredible coaching or like the team has just stepped up, whatever it is. Like I didn't think Minnesota would be able to like keep that level of like playmaking and like avoiding the turnovers without her, and like they have, and they've been such a cool story, I think, in the Big Ten. There's so many stories in this conference, but like I'm like really have enjoyed this run they've been on.
No, absolutely. Moose is being annoying in the background.
They also have been a very, very tough stretch after Wisconsin, I've just seen. So
Yeah. No, that's the hard part about the schedule. Like it
yep.
gets it's not like evenly dispersed. You're just like getting some games chunked together that are really difficult. We
They
might
get their
schedule.
weekend in California where they have to play USC and UCLA as
Yeah.
well.
So to close out, because my dog's starting to lose his mind, let's do some quick rapid fire on Oregon, Indiana, Illinois, and Washington, and Iowa, I guess, because
Yeah.
God, man, there's so many teams in this conference. We would obviously love to hit on every team, but Oregon, where are you at with Oregon right now? What's like your quick rundown on kind of where they're at, how things have gone? Obviously had a solid win over Iowa, late clock buzzer in that game, and they've been off almost a week now. I think they had most of this week off, and I don't remember who they're going to play this weekend, but yeah, where have you been out with this team? They've gone through a lot of change throughout the season.
Yeah, I want to say it's an. Oh, I think. Oh, they play Indiana, so that's a big
Oh,
one.
so that'll be a
Is
big one.
Oregon? I'm glad that they're in a spot where we can talk about them on this because it means that they're in the tournament picture. And I know like they weren't in the Big Ten last year, but last year was a disaster. Obviously, they've completely changed what that roster looks like. But that doesn't always work. It's not always as easy as that. So credit to them. I think like Deja Kelly's been very solid for them. They are so wildly balanced in how they score. Like they're Deja Kelly's leading them with 11 points a game, and then there's like nine players that also put up some sort of solid, like consistent production. They're like I love Eliza Mevia still. Like she's not gonna light up the box score, but I think she's such an impactful player, like on both ends. I think that I just think she's great. I think like she's one of their more valuable players. I've been impressed with Peyton Scott. I think like she was there last year but didn't get to play. I think like they're a good team. I think like they're a team that's harder to beat than I thought, and they were a hard one to read in the preseason because they were so new and it went so poorly last year. So I'm just glad that they're in the picture and like are absolutely fighting. Like they haven't really been an easy out for anybody yet.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing too for them, like unless they just really struggle in the upcoming stretch, I think they're a lock for the tournament. Having that win over Baylor is one of the best wins that is their best win right now and one of the better
Yeah.
ones that you could have just in general because Baylor has been good. They're always solid. They're going to be a top 25-ish team for most of the season. So having that key non-con, especially because Baylor could end up hanging around that same spot, between like the 8 and 10 seeds. So that was key. I think the biggest thing for this team too is like you mentioned, other than their loss to Georgia Tech, which they lost by double digits, they haven't lost a game by double digits this season. They were tight with Ohio State until like right at the end when that sort of I don't even want to say came apart, but like Ohio State just put some really good possessions together with clock management stuff. Actually, they lost to USC double
I was
digits.
gonna
Never
say like
mind. That
I was gonna,
game that
it
game was
barely
rough.
counts.
I'm sorry. That
Just
how
kidding.
that game was 5 weeks ago, and it feels like way longer. Wild man. This
That
season's
was
been so
when
long.
USC just killed them in one quarter, was how it
Yeah,
felt. Yeah.
yeah. Um, But again, winning that game over Iowa, who Iowa I think I just had is in a play-in game for me right now. Um, so it's like it's in a tough spot with again just where the Big Ten is. But the player that I want to mention who has really popped for me, she didn't play as much earlier in the season, but has really impressed in conference play. And that's been Nani Falatea. Um, like they've really leaned into her as the first player off the bench. She started a couple games, but has primarily been coming off the bench. is their second leading scorer in conference play, has been really good from behind the arc. And I think that's, I don't even want to say like my issue with this team, but like the thing that I'll be interested to see is like, do they find ways to maybe balance that as the year goes on? Because they have been near the bottom of the Big Ten in threes getting up per game, threes made per game, and just efficiency from three in general. Obviously, they do a lot of really good things outside of that, particularly defensively. I think they've been strong. They're obviously solid on the glass, but like, I think that's kind of what I'll be interested to see is how they like maybe I think that they wouldn't have to be playing in like I feel like if this team is not playing in a tight game, they're going to struggle because even that USC game like we're talking about, it was really one bad quarter and then they were just kind of out of it because they weren't able to make a comeback just given how far apart things were. But regardless, like you mentioned, I think the depth on this team, like they play 11 every game. Deja's the only player who plays over 30 minutes. Like it's a lot of just balance, a lot of different ways to kind of attack the game. So, um, like you mentioned, I think I've just kind of God, I keep saying like you mentioned. It's one of those things because then when you hear it, it's in your head.
Not
I'm like,
yet.
ah, I
Now it's like,
can't unhear it. And um, but yes, um, I've just appreciated getting to watch this team be solid. Because again, before the season, I feel like it was just so up in the air. I
yeah.
think we called them the biggest wild card in the Big Ten.
Yep.
Um, let's talk about their other Pac-12 compatriot who came over, Washington. We talked about it at the beginning, like this team just being very fun. I
Hmm.
think I was interested just to see what this was going to look like. I knew they were changing up their offense before the season, had some bumps in the road early on in the year, but man, they have like really figured out how to play this new style offense last night or 2 nights ago, not withholding against Iowa. But in general, like I think watching this team has been really fun. I don't know how much you watched them last year. It does not look anything like last year's team.
Okay.
Like, it's so different. Like just the jump up that we've seen from El Ladine and Savia Sellers has been awesome. Like just
Say
two
Sellers has been
incredibly good
awesome.
players who can make shit happen. I always love watching Delia Daniels play. It's not the deepest team, but what they can do when they have their starting lineup together and playing out of some of those variations has been like it's been very fun to watch.
Yeah, those three, and then I'd also say Hannah Steins as well, like kind of
Yeah.
make like a big four, and like those four are enough often to like I think they can carry them to a lot of wins. Like they're a pretty veteran group. I know Stellar's only a sophomore, but those four have really impressed me with how like solid they have been. They are in a bit of a rough patch. They've lost three of four. So I'm curious what this next stretch will look like for them. I would like to see them bounce back because they had won five in a row before that and were like they were winning handedly against the teams they were supposed to. They like went on the road and beat Illinois. Like again, as we said with Illinois, like they do have injuries, but on the road it's still a huge Big Ten win. Michigan State, Michigan, Iowa, like none of those are terrible losses. The margin for the Iowa loss at home, I would argue, is not one you would want. But do you have Washington in the moment at the moment in or just out?
They're the first team out.
Okay. I
And
know
that's
that
the hard
ESPN
part.
has them like just in as well. So like
Yeah,
that's
I
right there.
think I debated it. It's hard because they lost to Montana, and like I, it's tough because like Montana's actually good. Their record's not
Yeah.
great right now, but they're a tough team to play against. They have a really good offense. I think Brian Holzinger is really good. Their guard Matt Koenig is really difficult to play against, and she torched them in that game. Um, I think I accredited that one to watch them early on. Like they really did not have a great feel for the offense and how they wanted to play lineups early on in the year, and it took some time. And I think they're again kind of figuring that out because like to me, a lot of the Iowa games like they just didn't shoot the ball well. Like I think that was a big part of it.
They
But
were out
then
of
you
it.
have the game
Yeah.
against UCLA and Utah. Like in both those games, I would have liked to see them win the Utah game, obviously, but um, should have won the LSU game
I
to
was,
be
yep.
honest. Like I think they that was a game that you lose that by poor execution. Like, and that's not to be unfair, but just saying like I think this team has a level where like I think they really should be an NCAA tournament team.
Mhm.
But they play Indiana on Monday, then at Ohio State, at Penn State, Maryland, Oregon, USC, Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, Oregon. It's not the worst schedule you could have. And I will say like their travel schedule is tough this year because they had the Northwestern in Illinois, then the Michigan trip like 2 weeks after. and then they'll have to come out to Columbus at the beginning of February.
A lot of back to
Like,
backs.
yeah, it's not an easy stuff to do for them, but they need to they really need to do well in the back half because I think one of the things that's going to be tough. I do think just in general with how the selection committee tends to be, if you have a really bad loss, that can weigh on you. Montana right now is a quad four loss. I think it's going to hold up as a quad four loss. Um, that's why I have them out right now. And just recent play, like losing three out of the last four is
Yeah.
going to probably put you out. Um, so I would like to, I think they kind of need to win this Indiana game, especially because Indiana, I think, was in my last four buys. So like they're right on the edge of being in the
Should we move
bubble
into Indiana?
themselves. So this game against Indiana is huge. That's the hard part of the Big Ten because like, okay, cool. You play Indiana, you play Oregon twice, you play Minnesota. That's all teams that are like right there. So there's just going to be so much movement within the middle of the Big Ten, like we're talking about.
Should we transition into Indiana? They keep giving us nice
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah, yeah.
segues.
Let's talk about Indiana. The it's so tough for them because they have had like I was really worried about them early on in the year.
Yes.
Like really worried, particularly the
Yeah.
Butler game. Like I thought
Mhm.
Harvard I thought was fine. Harvard's
Yeah, I
really
think
tough to
Harvard's
play
a good
against.
team.
Harmony
Yeah.
Turner's awesome. Like that's a hard team to play against. The Butler loss, that worried me. Um, Losing to UNC by 30 points, I think UNC is a lot better now than I thought UNC was a top 25 team when they played Iowa when they played Indiana, but I think UNC is closer to a top 10 team, honestly. So that looks as good as a 30-point loss can be. But like I think since Big Ten plays hit, there's been they played better, but I still just have questions in general. Like, and I think the biggest thing that I come back to is this team just really struggles to score when it matters most because they don't have an elite post presence like they've had the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Um, I like even to me in the USC game when that was coming down to the wire, I felt like a lot of it was we don't necessarily feel comfortable getting into anything. Obviously, I think you can point to defensive stuff as well in that game. Don't get me wrong. I thought they did really good defensive stuff, to be honest, throughout that game. But a lot of it too, to me, is just like, what are we trying to get? Like, can we get something easy when it matters most? Like, where are you at with this group?
I think where I'm at, I think I'm in a very similar spot to you in the fact that like I think that like their top end talent should be enough to at least make the NCAA tournament with them. Like I think the guards specifically with Chesky, Moore, McNeil, Garzone, and Parrish, like I feel very good about those four, and I think they play their roles very well. They would all be improved with having Mackenzie Holmes still here because like Mackenzie Holmes is very much a not one of a kind, but like one of the best players in the country when she was at her best. Um, I know last game against USC, they went to Caroline Striplin at starting over Lily Meister. And I'm curious if that's going to continue. And I would like to see it if so. I think I've been impressed with Caroline Striplin off the bench. It seems like when they go to her more, she's been impressive. She's shooting 60%. Um, like, I think that Meister's been solid as a starter, but like, and no one can replace Mackenzie Holmes one for one. That's just not going to happen. But I think this team is struggling with depth and like they had like Parrish went down as well with injury. Like they've had their struggles there. I was hoping for more McNeil to make more of a leap now that they don't have Mackenzie Holmes because she's been such a solid player for them for so long. But it seems like she is still going to be just more of a primary facilitator and like it's going to be more Chesky or Garzone who's going to be their like scorers at this point. So it feels like they're missing like a volume scorer because I think Garzone would work better if she was more of like a secondary piece. And she's so efficient, she's so good at her shot. But there's just not like there just hasn't been that X factor like I think you were kind of saying. Um,
Yeah, I think you
yeah.
put it better than I could have. I think it was like having somebody who balances things out would be awesome. Like I think that Shea is capable of taking that step, and I would have loved to see it. I think obviously like having the injury early on, maybe well, she didn't even miss time for it now I think about it. She just like had it in the middle of the game. So never mind on that. But um I think it's interesting because like Yarden is the only player taking over 10 field goal attempts per game right
Mhm.
now. And it's tough because like it's been awesome watching her take more. She's been
They've
like
slowed
arguably the
down as
best
well.
volume 3-point shooter in the league this year.
Yeah.
But again, part of the issue is like I think her best shot and what she's most comfortable getting to most of the time is a three.
Mhm.
Or like doing something coming off of a screen. She's not necessarily comfortable like I have the ball in my hands, I'm creating like this.
Yes.
It just is harder to set that stuff up late in the game. And like I think that's been kind of the difficulty a little bit. Like we mentioned, particularly in that USC game, it's like, okay, cool. Well, when we're playing against a team that is game plan for that, that can shut that down, how do we create off the dribble and like make something happen here? So it's been interesting with that, and I'm hopeful that they can continue to kind of weather that and figure it out. Um, I still think this team is solid and like capable of making the tournament, but we're gonna learn a lot about them in the upcoming schedule. Like we mentioned, that Washington game coming up is going to be huge because that's two teams like right on the bubble. Losing to Illinois was really difficult,
Yeah.
particularly in the way they did because, and I think that's where you see some of the stuff too. Like, this team is strong, but they're not necessarily like I think they have like some strong athletic capabilities and like their length and being able to play with strength, but they're not a super fast team. And like Illinois' ability to just kind of like win off the dribble a lot in that game, even though they're smaller, um, I think was an issue in just kind of winning that game. Or oh, sorry, what you were saying? You were raising your hand.
I was gonna say like I was gonna mention the slow. I feel like they've slowed the pace because of this. Like it feels
Yeah,
like they've had to try to like get into their sets and everything. And like I was. It seems like it often is like if they cannot score. Like this is gonna be the most dumb guy answer of all time. But like their games that they lost, they've scored like a 39, a 46. Like you're never gonna win a game like that. It feels like if a team can shut them down, like I don't know. I feels like they just completely like they've fallen apart a few times this season. Especially for a team with like seemingly a lot of experience. Like I was surprised to see that.
yeah,
And I feel like I think when I was gonna raise my hand is they have Washington, but they have Oregon tonight. Like which I will be out by the time this goes out, whenever that is.
yeah,
But like that those are two massive bubble games for Indiana,
yeah.
especially like considering how like these recent stretch. So like I feel like those are pivotal in like if they're going to make the NCAA tournament.
No, absolutely. Speaking of Illinois, let's talk about Illinois. Who, I mean, I've been impressed just that they've been able to keep going in spite of
Yeah.
losing Makira Cook and Gretchen Dolan, who Gretchen Dolan was looking like one of
Yes.
the potentially like sixth player of the year in the Big Ten. Um, so losing those two, like I've been really impressed with Jasmine Brown Hager stepping up. Barry Wallace has continued to show some stuff in a bigger role as a freshman. Um, but I'm not. I just think it's going to be interesting because they have two players right now playing almost 40 minutes per game in Genesis Bryant and Kendall Bostic, which granted, like I think they have like 12 years of college experience between the two. So like I get them playing that much, which grant also Kendall Bostic has been awesome this year. She
Yes.
has
I was
been
going to
like
say it if you didn't.
she's like long been a good steady starter, but she's been like a star this season, averaging 16 and 11, been really efficient.
I felt like she's been a player that's been good for them, like as you said, but like I feel like she's always been going up. Like every year, I've been like, Kendall Boss is just getting a little bit better every year. Like, and the fact she's averaging 16 and 11 and a block, like, and is asked to do more without like losing Makira Cook is massive for just like she's such a high volume, like willing to find a shot type player. Like it takes a lot out of what Illinois can do. So like. I think they have impressed me with how they've been able to adapt without her. Genesis Bryant is being asked to do way more, and like her shooting has fallen because of that. Which like I get it, like I really do. I think Adalia McKenzie has consistently been underrated as well for Illinois, and like has been very good for them this year. Just kind of fills her role, 13 points a game, like pretty efficient shooter. And then yeah, I would love to see Barry Wallace continue to take those leaps. Like I was super impressed with what Gretchen Dolan was doing this year before she got hurt. And like Wallace, I think was a 5-star as well. So like just feels like I don't think this season is lost at all for Illinois. Like they're still a really veteran team, and like those players with a million years of experience like do not want to go out on a note that's not the NCAA tournament. So I think they're going to have a lot of fight, but see if we can get more Barry Wallace action as well, I think that could just be beneficial for this year and obviously moving forward.
No, definitely. And it helps too because their upcoming schedule is Purdue on Monday, Rutgers, Maryland, who will
Yeah,
of course be tough, but then Northwestern, Wisconsin, Penn State. And then they have to close with Nebraska, UCLA, USC, Michigan, which that'll be tough. But like,
you
I
take
think
what
if
you
they,
get.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think if they can bank some of these wins here, that could be really helpful for them. Like having beaten, like their Florida State win is huge for them. Like that was really big having
Yep.
that early on in the year. Having beaten Oregon, that matters a ton. Like just having that head to head when they're that close. Obviously, they've beaten Iowa too. They've beaten Indiana. That's one of the best things for Illinois right now is that they have beaten a lot of the teams that are like again right there with them in the bubble.
Yep.
And they don't have a bad loss. So that's been good. Obviously, again, like margin of victory is not great in the Michigan State loss, but that part of the injury aspect that happened. So
Mm.
I'm with you. I think it's just I've loved everything Shauna Green has done with this team. I think, like you mentioned, part of what was so tough with last year is I think we had these giant expectations for what they could be instead of remembering, hey, this is year two.
Of Illinois, like
Yeah, exactly. And again, watching what they've done this year too as well, like I I just want to see it keep I mean it is growing, seeing it continue to grow to where it's at. And in some ways maybe not having some of the pressure has been good for them. I want to add though, Adalia McKenzie, I continue to always love watching her play basketball. I think just figuring out the consistency like she has to be like that level of player all the time has been really cool to see her get to. Um, so yeah, I've been loving that. Do you want to close with Iowa?
yes, let's do it.
Ironically, we're closing with Iowa when they have really struggled to close games. I mean that in the nicest way possible,
Five
but
straight single digit losses is tough.
yeah, it's on one hand, I understand fan frustration because this has been like when you go from where it was at last year and the year before to being in national championship games to, well, now we're 13-7. I can imagine that's really difficult. Um, but it's interesting too, because like I have this team in the field still. They beat Virginia Tech, they beat Kansas, beat Drake, beat Washington State, um, beat Iowa State. Like they did a lot in non-conference. Conference play has been rough though. What have you like what I don't even want to say worried necessarily, but like what have you felt most in conference play that stuck out to you?
It's tough, right? Because like I look at these losses and like none of them are on their own that bad. Like all five of these opponents are solid teams, like all ones we've talked about already. Maryland, Illinois, Indiana, Nebraska, and Oregon. Nebraska was in OT. Um, I think any of them on their own, it's like I don't even know if we're discussing it that much. But the fact that they had five straight down the stretch, I think they have run into some similar problems to what we were saying with Indiana where like I think like not having Caitlin Clark, hey, I'm gonna say a big hot take here, maybe a bit impactful. And I think you notice it the most with this team, I think, down the stretch, not even when Caitlin Clark could get you a basket, but like could find Taylor like someone on the interior, find an open shooter, like her ability to see the floor like is huge to find other people open looks even when she's covered. Like Lucy Olson, getting her in the portal was huge. A really nice get to like be able to be as competitive as they've been this year. And I think she's been very good. And she was excellent against Washington. I don't know if like, she did miss a shot, but like I think like Olsen is a solid passer, but she's not have Clark's vision and like not have like the ability to get Hannah Stolke the ball or Addison O'Grady the ball as well this year, like in the same way down the stretch of games. And I think like Stolke, I thought would have a larger like role or year than she has had. And it feels like it's made, I don't know if it's because her and O'Grady are on the floor at the same time a lot. It feels like the rhythm isn't quite there in the same way it was, even without Caitlin Clark being the reason for that. I think Sydney Falter's also one where like she's playing her role very well again, but I wasn't sure if she would have like a high volume increase without Clark, and she hasn't. I'm a huge Taylor McCabe enthusiast and think they should continue to use her off the bench because she's like the best shooter in the Big Ten. Every year she does this. No matter what the volume is, she's shooting like 45% from three. And they're using her more now. I feel like they're getting her involved in the ways they should, especially in that Washington game and whatnot. I think like I wouldn't overreact as an Iowa fan despite going 0-5 in that stretch because they were all close losses against solid teams. You obviously want to win them, but I think that this team like should still make the tournament and like has a lot of room to improve and like has a lot of good pieces. I've also liked some of the freshmen that they've brought in. Like Taylor Stremlo has had good moments, Ava Hyden's had good moments. Like I think there's still a lot to be happy about with Iowa, even with this recent stretch of tough losses.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think, like you said, it's tough because as good as Lucy is, like I think that's where I struggled with some of the stuff before conference play was like I just don't think it's fair to expect her to come in and be the same level of player.
Yes.
Um, I because like you said, I think again with even with Lucy, like she's not even close to the same level of three-point shooting threat. Where she's not really like I mean she's a player that you can kind of lay off of. Where she really excels is more of like being able to come off of a screen, be a screener herself. Like and it was fun watching how Iowa's kind of worked that into redefining their offense a little bit. But again, like that takes like a lot of different stuff to make that happen. In order to get the ball like that, I think it's a lot easier to keep the ball out of her hands per se than it is with keeping the ball out of Caitlin's hands. And I'm like, no shit. I mean, she was just rookie of the year. She was an all
Yeah.
WNBA player. So I'm not trying to make it like a comparison thing. I think it's just you see the difficulty of like, okay, when you have a really great roster of role players and you don't necessarily have like the same quite tier of star that is unlocking all that together, then it shows. And I will say the quick, not even quick fix, but like I don't understand at this point starting Stalky and O'Grady together. And
Yeah.
a lot of it too is like, yes, like Addie's playing 20 minutes. It's not like she's playing the entire game, but I think it's tough because Hannah has done so much good stuff defensively at the four. Like, I actually think this team has been really solid defensively.
Yeah.
It hasn't been perfect, but I think you've seen a step up, just given different personnel this year. Um, but I think you just see how cramped it can be at times with the spacing on the floor when she is at the four because she's not a comfortable three-point shooter. She's made tremendous strides, literally and figuratively, as a ball handler, like attacking the basket but
Yeah.
she's not really super comfortable yet in finishing herself as somebody attacking the basket, in my opinion. People can disagree with that, but like I think that's where you see a lot of her turnovers is when she's driving, ends up being a charge or a turnover. Um, it's just like I think it's a tough spot because it's similar to like sort of what Delia Daniels has gone through this year at Washington. To me, Delia Daniels is a five. I think she should be playing the five. I think that's where she's best at. She's playing the four in this year's offense. She's been a high turnover player. She's cutting it down now. She's starting to figure it out and like learning more to play the four, but that's part of the trade-off. Like just because you're athletically capable of playing the four, can see the floor at the four, it's different. Like you just feel different things. You get guarded a little bit differently. The angles are different. Like Hannah was so awesome as a rim runner and doing things at the five because she's faster than five. She has a little bit of shake with her handle and like she could take advantage of that. And I think it's been a little bit harder this year because when you're at the four, you just get loaded up on differently. And I still think Hannah's been very, very good, but it's part of the difficulty of like that role change and figuring that out. But what's been awesome, like she's getting to the line 7 times a game. And that's part of the aspect of like you see her athleticism really popping, her ability to attack really popping. I think it's just how do they kind of keep merging those things? And to me, like as much as I value what Addie can do as a post-up option, I still think in general, like this team's bread and butter is by playing smaller, Hannah at the five, and really trying to stay spaced out. Because I think anytime that they have more than one player on the floor that isn't going to get guarded as a shooter, that just kind of changes the offense fundamentally. So, not that that should be the end all be all for everything, but I do think it's a pretty big factor.
I mentioned the freshman and then forgot to mention Aaliyah Guyton. So I just want to
Who's
make
been
sure
very
that
good.
yeah, Aaliyah Guyton has also very much impressed me. In that Nebraska game, especially down the stretch, she had 14 points in that game. They were like, I think she took the shot, which it didn't go in, but like she took the last shot for them with a chance to win it in regulation, which told me a lot of what they trust in Aaliyah Guyton. So I'm excited to see her continue to get a larger role as well. Yeah, I'm with you with I think Addison O'Grady's had a very solid year. She's shooting 66%. It's not like I just think the fit doesn't fully work. And I think that it could I think that their ceiling can be reached like higher with O'Grady coming off the bench and Stolke going back to the five.
I agree entirely. Well, Wyatt, unfortunately, we are not going to catch the last, I think, 5, 6 teams left in the
I'm
Big
so
Ten.
sorry.
I'm sorry to everyone. We would love to, but I just don't have, I didn't bank on this being 3 hours. I should have because we can talk ball all the time. Is there anything you want to plug or mention before we get out of here?
I'll just plug Hoopla one more time.
And I recommend it for everyone. I'll have
Yes,
it
I
linked down
post
below.
once a week every Monday, just the Big Ten happenings. It's free. All you have to do is go to hoopla.substack.com. But it's been a fun year with the extra teams. Obviously, they've given us plenty more storylines, but also there's so much happening at all times. So
Yeah, it's been
been
truly
crazy.
insane. Yeah, and also to everyone who is watching this, I promise my dog is fine. He was on the, you could see him on the back howling. He just wants to play ball. We played ball for about 35 minutes in the freezing weather outside before hopping on Zoom with Wyatt. So Moose is completely fine. He is just trying to trick you. Don't worry. To everyone watching and listening, be sure to keep up with all things women's basketball. Go tap like and subscribe down below. Keep up with everything Wyatt's doing over on his website. And most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day.